Sheriff Ray Nash here with another installment of Police Dynamics Video. Today we want to talk about a concept I call the Twin Towers of Integrity. Now, we've already defined integrity as being who you represent yourself to be, a critical ingredient in this idea of building trust into a relationship. But let's take a further look at this idea of integrity, this concept of wholeness and completeness, and break it down into two components I call the Twin Towers of Integrity. One of these towers is the pillar of character. We understand that as a component of integrity, but there's also another component. That's the component of competency. Both of these towers are critically important to being a man or a woman of integrity. Let's define them this way. Let's define character as the inward motivation to do the right thing regardless of the circumstances and regardless of the cost. And let's define competency as the knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary to get the job done. Both of these are critically important to our success. Let me give you an illustration. If I was to tell you that I was going to do something and then fail to do it, well, there's one of at least two reasons. Number one, I never intended to do it to start with. I was just giving you lip service, but I never intended to follow through, and that would be a character failure, a character issue. On the other hand, maybe I fully intended to do what I said I was going to do, but I lacked the necessary knowledge, skills, or abilities to get the job done. That would be a competency failure. Either way, there has been a failure of my integrity, and there's been damage done to our relationship. Now, how much damage depends really, I think, on probably two factors. Number one, what was the nature of the offense? Just how big of a failure was it? And secondly, how much trust was pre-existing in our relationship? If we had a full tank of trust and we've been building this relationship for some time and the offense was relatively minor, well, you might forgive me very quickly. And it may be very easy to restore the trust that had been lost or the damage that had been done. And you might say something like, well, Ray, normally we can depend on Ray. We don't know why he didn't follow through this particular time. Normally he's very dependable. And you would probably forgive me very quickly. You might even say it would be out of character for Ray not to follow through. Or, but if there's already that level of trust present. But both character and competence are critical for building trust into a relationship. And here's my observation. I think we've done a pretty good job in the law enforcement arena over here on the competency side. I think we've trained our officers well. I would go so far to say that in America, we have the best trained, most professional police officers that have perhaps ever walked the face of the planet in terms of their level of professional competencies, the skill set that they have. But I also observe that we have neglected to a large degree this character component. If anything, we talk a little bit about ethics, which is more of a behavior-based approach, and we give it a little lip service, but we don't spend a lot of time digging deeply into these character principles. But remember, I said both of them are important. In fact, if I was to ask you what percentage of all of your professional training up to this point in your career has been competency-based, knowledge, skills, and abilities, versus how much has been character-based, dealing with professional ethics and codes of conduct and standards in that arena, most of you would tell me that anywhere from 70 to 90% or higher of all your training has been in the competency arena. And we've neglected to a large degree the character side. But where are all of our problems? Virtually all of our problems are over here in the character arena. When's the last time, for example, that someone in your agency got terminated for a lack of competency? When's the last time somebody was fired because they couldn't qualify on the firing range? They couldn't pass the driving test. They couldn't write a decent report. They couldn't testify in court properly. They couldn't process a crime scene. I know those things happen from time to time, but when's the last time that happened versus somebody got fired for lying to a supervisor, for falsifying a police report, for taking something that didn't belong to them, for abusing a prisoner or taking indecent liberties with an inmate or an informant. These are the kinds of things that are killing us in the law enforcement profession, yet we're largely neglecting the character side of this equation. It's interesting that as I've traveled around doing this training, I'll use that list of examples of lying to a supervisor, falsifying a report, abusing a prisoner, indecent liberties with an inmate. And on a couple of occasions, I've had students come up to me on the break and say, "Boy, you really did your research on that, didn't you?" And I'll say, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, that list that you gave, that every single one of those things has happened in this agency within the last 12 months. You must have done your research before you came here to get that list." And I have to confess, no, I didn't do any research before I came here. You want to know where that list came from? That's my list. Every single one of those things has happened within my organization when I've been the chief or the sheriff. And so I understand what happens when you have these character failures. Listen, having a character initiative in your agency does not insulate you from character failures, because we're human beings, and at some point in time we will have these character failures and someone will let you down. But it does give you a way to minimize them, it does give you a way to address them, and it does give you a way to insulate you and your organization and your officers to at least some degree from having these character failures. We've got to be busy about the business of reinstituting this character component within our organizations and within our own lives, within our communities, and within our families. That's the key to success.